The Blast from Our Past Network.
Lock your doors, close your windows, turn out your lights, for chills and thrills await you. It's time for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Stay with a friend, say your prayers as grisly ghouls close in to seal your doom. Tonight's episode, Werner Herzog's documentary, My Best Fiend.
Ich bin nicht der offizielle Kirchen-Jesus.
War nicht ganz normal, aggressiv. Vom Charakter her war er diabolisch.
Wir waren zusammen ja wie zwei kritische Massen, die eine gefährliche Mischung ergaben, wenn sie in Berührung kamen.
Los, machen Sie die Kamera und drehen den Scheißdreck runter!
Das werde ich nicht tun, Herr Kinski. Ich entfernte ihn darauf aus dieser Einstellung. Kinski tobte, ich sei größenwahnsinnig geworden. Ich sagte ihm darauf, dann sind wir jetzt eben zu zweit. Was war der Grund, dass ich mir das antat?
He's crazy. It's crazy. That's why we work together.
Wir gehörten zusammen. Wir waren bereit, miteinander unterzugehen. Egozentrisch ist wahrscheinlich gar nicht das richtige Wort. Er war richtiggehend egomanisch.
Die Erde, über die ich gehe, sieht mich und bebt mir nach.
Und der schrie stundenlang auf mich ein, aber so dicht an meinem Gesicht. Kinski wollte mich gegen meinen eigenen Irrsinn schützen. Er war sehr, sehr lieb mit mir auch damals und hat mich geküsst und hat mich ganz lang gehalten und war ganz, ganz aufgelöst und sehr gerührt auch.
Das Einzige, was zählte, war, was letztlich auf der Leinwand zu sehen war.
Nature is erotic. It's vile. It's asphyxiation and fornication and growing and rotting away. The birds are in misery. The bees are in misery. Harmony of overwhelming and collective murder. That was a line from Walt Disney's The Little Mermaid, everybody. JK, LOL. JK, LOL. Welcome to Podcasting After Dark. I am one half of the PAD team, Sexy Z. And joining me as always is Sleazy C. Corey, what's happening, dude?
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
Oh, is that from Mandalorian?
You know, you've seen The Mandalorian. Don't act like you haven't seen it.
I don't know. If you're wondering what the hell we're talking about, well, why would you wonder that? You saw it in the show notes and in the description. It's a picture of Werner Herzog and Klaus Kinski. We are talking about 1999's My Best Fiend, directed by Werner Herzog. It's a documentary. This is the second episode of our docu-series that we're doing for the month of August. You previously listened to the documentary Lost Soul about Richard Stanley's failed attempt at making the island of Dr. Moreau. That was Corey's pick, which I think is very appropriate because I know Corey is a big fan of Richard Stanley's Hardware specifically. Maybe not his and Color Out of Space too. And I am a huge fan of Werner Herzog. My history with Herzog, I went to film school, like at community college and regular UC college back in the day. Took a lot of film classes and watched a lot of Herzog films back in the day. And Aguirre, Wrath of God, one of his first movies he ever made, stood out to me like a nail in the eyeball of your best friend's brain. What? And it just stayed with me. And it's one of my all-time favorite films for many reasons, and I'll get into that later. And I've always been fascinated with Werner Herzog. I think he's one of the greatest directors of all time, but a true kook. And just like Richard Stanley is on many levels, these guys are wacky artists to the highest degree. and what they do with their films and their style of filmmaking, I think is very unique. And that's why I chose this documentary to talk about today. But Corey, do you have any relationship with Werner Herzog's films outside of his acting in The Mandalorian?
I've seen Nosferatu with Klaus Kinski. I, too, went to film school. I went to Towson University, same school that produced John Glover, from the movie Scrooged. Also Amy Schumer, but probably right now the most relevant is Mike Flanagan. I did all the film classes. I think I went the same program that Mike Flanagan did. I think I was maybe about a semester or so above him. So he might have actually been there when I was there. I didn't know him. But my point is, I didn't watch any Werner Herzog films in college. They didn't show them to us.
Wow.
I instead watched Double Indemnity like 3 times and fell asleep through 2 of them. But I did see, like I said, the Nosferatu one way back in the day, to the point where I barely remember it. I was on a kick at that time. I watched, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and stuff like that. I was just on this like sort of old school German horror kick and everything. But outside of that, I know the name Werner Herzog. Everybody knows it, or at least if you're a cinemaphile, you do. So when I'm going through his IMDb, I am shocked at how little I've actually seen. But after watching this movie, My Best Fiend, I absolutely want to watch every movie they discuss in it, because they all seem fascinating, but as does Klaus Kinski.
Yeah. So before we get into the Kinski factor, Werner Herzog is a prolific director. He did 5 movies with Klaus Kinski, which we'll talk about in a minute, but he's done a lot of documentaries as well. Most recently, he did one called The Grizzly Man, which was got a lot of critical praise. Really good documentary about a very interesting dude. He takes very interesting subject matters. He has a very interesting perspective. He's often parodied for his kind of like his calm disdain for things. Like he has a love-hate relationship with nature, and he talks about that in this documentary. But yeah, Werner is still very, very much alive. I think he has a book that is coming out, or it just came out, talking about his career. He was just here in Santa Monica doing a retrospective on all his movies, which is awesome. The guy is a true auteur. Like there's no one like him at all.
If you literally look in the dictionary and you look up auteur, it's Werner Herzog. It is him. Yes, we love John Carpenter, but it's Werner Herzog is the god auteur.
Yeah, he has a very specific style that just drew me in. He does these long shots that just sit with and it's very purposeful. He talks about that in the documentary. In particular, I'm just going to really quickly just say this about Aguirre, Wrath of God, the first movie he did with Klaus Kinski. There's a shot of the Andes Mountains, and there are these, he argued with Klaus because Klaus wanted a close-up shot of his face in the beginning of the movie. Instead, he focuses the camera on this mountain, and you see as the clouds kind of part from the side of this mountain, you see dozens of people going up this mountain as a part of this expedition, the main kind of plot of the movie. And it's so fascinating because it's like the camera just sits there on this image and tells so much of a story just in these by not doing anything. It's really beautiful.
Aguirre, Wrath of God is the top of my list of what I want to see of his.
Yeah, you should see that.
It looks awesome.
You should see that. And to piggyback a little bit on Marlon Brando, and no pun intended with the piggyback, that he, obviously he was in Apocalypse Now. Francis Ford Coppola was heavily influenced by Aguirre, Wrath of God.
Okay.
But yeah, so Herzog made this documentary in '99 about his relationship with Klaus Kinski, the actor Klaus Kinski. You may know Klaus Kinski from a lot of different... I mean, the guy has actually been in countless movies. He is somewhat of a cult. Would you say it's safe to say he's a cult figure?
Absolutely.
Yeah. He's been in well over 200 movies. He passed away in, I think, 1991. He's been in everything from spaghetti westerns. He was in this amazing spaghetti western called The Great Silence, which I highly recommend. It may show up later on in the year on Pad, perhaps.
And I just saw him probably about 7 months ago. I watched Creature, a.k.a. Titan Find, 1985, for the first time, and he was in that as well.
Yeah, he's been in everything from German films, Italian spaghetti westerns, to mainstream American movies as well. He's been all over the place. His daughter is Natasha Kinski, by the way. She from Cat People. And so this documentary is about Werner's relationship with Klaus, but also a little bit about Werner Herzog as well as a filmmaker. I was going to originally choose a movie called Burden of Dreams. It's a documentary that came out, I believe, in 1982 but that's specifically about one movie that Herzog made, Fitzcarraldo, and all the bullshit that went on in Fitzcarraldo.
Which they discuss in this movie.
They do. There are some clips from Burden of Dreams, and if you want to know about that, go watch the documentary and then go watch Fitzcarraldo. But this documentary kind of talks about where they started to where it ended, their relationship ended. And it's very fascinating. It opens with Klaus Kinski screaming at an audience, screaming.
From his, like, a weird sort of stage tour thing that he was doing where he was playing Jesus, but
Yes.
yet it's just him yelling at people. He's not like in a costume or anything. It was really weird.
Really weird. It's captivating because you're like, what the hell is going on? They kind of explain later on in the documentary the context for what it is. This is classic Herzog, by the way, because it's like you open with something and you're like, what's going on here? And you eventually get it down the road.
Yeah.
That's what happens throughout most of this documentary. And then from there, you jump to present time and Herzog at his like childhood home in Germany. And he's interviewing the now owners of this home who have renovated this place substantially. And apparently Herzog was living with like 8 other people in this flat, and he meets Kinski for the first time. And he meets Kinski when he's very young, like a teenager. And Kinski was living in a room in an attic with no furniture, but leaves, like 2 feet of leaves, basically, in the attic. And he was kind of totally naked, always, screaming and just doing all sorts of weird shit. And you're like, I mean, that alone, clearly Kinski has mental issues. Like, it's clear. The guy was either bipolar or something.
Yeah, and you know, we're no authorities. We can't speak on that, but I'm with you. He obviously had some sort of issue. Right out of the gate, though, like with the beginning, you talking about Werner Herzog talking or interviewing the people who own the house now. You know, you hear so much about, you know, the gruff exterior of Werner Herzog. Right away, though, you can tell how warm he is. I don't know if it's the people that are like not in the industry or something, but I don't know. It's almost like he seemed warm to everybody when he's not shooting. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Like maybe when he's shooting is when he's, becomes like what he becomes and what everybody sort of knows him as. But all the other times I was taken aback by how warm and sort of nice and approachable he seemed.
Yeah. He has a reputation as a filmmaker to be very risk-taking to the point where people have died on set.
Or also flappable. Like he stands his ground. He you know what I mean, with what his vision is and everything.
Yeah, and
Who died, by the way? Who died on what set?
Oh, and Fitzcarraldo.
Okay.
So So really quick, just jumping ahead, he makes this movie called Fitzcarraldo with Klaus Kinski. The movie is about a man who
wants to bring opera to the natives, I guess, or whatever, native jungle people.
Yeah, so he has this grand idea to take like a riverboat and pull it over a mountain. Well, Herzog wanted to recreate this actual thing
because it's based on a true story.
It's based on a true story, and he recreated it. And at one point, the logs that were pulling the boat up the mountain collapsed, and some people died.
Wow.
So he's got that going for him. And but he's interviewing. Yeah, he's talking to the family at this home, and he's telling them wild stories about Herzog, all the crazy things he's telling wild stories about Kinski, all the crazy things Kinski has been doing while they've known him. Like, someone said, you're very good in this or something like that. And he's like, I was excellent. And he like screams at them. Right. And you can see the look of shock on this couple's face. They don't know what to do because Herzog has a tone about him that's very calm and very even keeled in one note. And he's telling these crazy stories about a madman who practically could kill someone if he wanted to, and they're just like, what the fuck is going on here?
And you know that they know who Klaus Kinski is and everything because he was such a big name, especially in Germany because they were German. But also at the same time, yeah, Werner Herzog downloaded a lot of information into their brains that they were clearly not ready for.
No, not at all. And you from there you kind of jump ahead to his first project he did with Kinski, which is Aguirre Wrath of God. Up until that point, Herzog describes what Kinski did as an actor that immediately drew him in, a movie that he did in Germany back in the day. It's a really fascinating kind of moment to identify that spark that Herzog saw in Kinski, like, oh, that's the guy I want to work with because of this one little moment in a movie, which is really, really cool. But he goes on to make
the movie. I actually wrote it down. I found that interesting as well. It's called Sons, Mothers, and a General, 1955, and because they showed the scene multiple times, they actually like loop it, they repeat it.
Yes.
And it was like when Klaus Kinski was like waking up at a table, like from a nap or something. But he was like, but even Werner Herzog was like, his memory inflated the scene maybe more than it maybe was originally. Even he admits that. But for some reason, that was literally the moment that he was like, this is my guy. This is who I want.
Yeah. And like I said, he went on to make 5 movies with Kinski. Those 5 movies are Aguirre Wrath of God, which I'll talk about in a second, Nosferatu, Wojciech, and then Fitzcarraldo, and then the final one, Cobra Verde. Yeah. But Aguirre Wrath of God is a descent into madness. It's the search for the lost city of gold, and it's so many of Herzog's films are based on true stories. So it's these Spanish conquistadors that are looking for the city of lost gold and how they eventually kind of erode. And, like Richard Stanley wanted to do with Moreau, Kinski or Herzog shoots like on location in these beautiful locations, much to, the dismay of like the cast and crew, because it's super dangerous. Like he doesn't necessarily put safety first. He puts safety last. And there are times in this movie, in all of the movies that he's made, specifically Wrath of God and Fitzcarraldo, where people were just put at risk so easily. They could have died for many many moments in this. And I'm not talking about what Kinski did to people on set. I'm talking about just the nature itself.
The one guy hit in the head with the machete, like actually like left that guy a scar, even though the guy had a helmet on and everything. And you know, he taught. Your documentary kind of bounces a little bit more than mine does. Mine is more focused on one film. Yours kind of sort of bounces around through the different films that he talks about and everything. But ultimately, you know, the documentary is trying to get to the bottom of why did he keep working and working with, why did Werner Herzog keep working with somebody who was so volatile and everything? And the irony is, I think at the end of this documentary, even Werner Herzog himself doesn't even know. There was just some sort of connection that the two had, and they made beautiful, insane art together. But my favorite story of the Aguirre Wrath of God was when fucking Klaus Kinski threatens to basically walk, and Werner Herzog basically has a rifle, and he's like, "You walk, I'm gonna fucking put 8 rounds in your fucking back, and then 1 in my own fucking brain, like, and we're done." And I think. I think the last part, I think the fact that he thought like 8 rounds in you and 1 for myself, saving 1 for myself. I think Klaus Kinski was like, okay, he thought this one out a little bit. I'm gonna reel it in a little bit here.
Yeah, because Kinski had this reputation of going off all the time. And this is not just with Herzog, with his other movies that he's made. He's a very difficult actor to work with. Inflated ego, and like I said, you know, clearly undiagnosed issues, but because I'm like, not someone in their right fucking mind just like snaps on a dime like that all the time. Like what Corey was talking about, specifically about hitting this guy in the head with a sword. The crew was taking a break from filming, and they saw a bunch of like fruit and bananas, and they went wild because they hadn't eaten. So they were starving. So they went over to the food to grab the food, and Kinski freaks out on them because they're grabbing the food, and he picks up a sword and he hits one of the guys in the head, but he's wearing his conquistador helmet, so it dents that, puts a scar on the dude's melon, and is like throwing people around left and right, screaming obscenities. This is all on tape, by the way. Like most of these stories are backed up with video evidence of the volatile shit going on. And, you know, Herzog always kind of like maintained this calmness. And I feel like Herzog was deeply attracted, I don't necessarily talking sexually, but like deeply attracted to Kinski's energy and just vibe.
Well,
you know,
I think also too, they elaborate when Kinski, there's a scene, I think in what's it called? Fitzgerald? What's it called?
Oh, Fitzcarraldo.
There's a scene in Fitzcarraldo where the boat crashes and the camera guy actually like really fucks up his hand.
Oh, he almost lost a finger.
Yeah, and there's it's all caught on camera. They show it and everything. But at that moment, you see Klaus Kinski and Werner Herzog kind of jump into like taking care of this guy, and it makes you wonder, like with Klaus Kinski, like is it an act? Is it like a chemical thing? Is he bipolar or whatever? You know, we're not trying to armchair diagnose or anything like that.
No.
But it was also nice to see when the time came, he became a human being and helped out this guy. And you could they even showed him like he was putting the bandages on. You could tell he was like being very like gentle and sensitive. And you're like, this man is a maniac in 1 second. And then next second later, he's genuinely caring for this guy's hand and really trying to take care of him, you know? And you're just like, okay, I get it. This is a complicated human being right here.
Complicated, but my God, like the two of them working together created magic. Because Aguirre, going back to Aguirre Wrath of God, there are moments where there's a scene where Herzog focuses his camera on Kinski's face. It's at the end of the movie when pretty much everything's been lost. Everything. I don't want to give too much away because it's you got to see the whole thing to like you'll be tripping balls on it, I'm sure, and you'll love it even more.
Awesome.
But Kinski is like, the camera's focused on his face, and he's kind of talking about how he's gonna marry his daughter and have a child with his daughter, and like he's losing his mind, you know. And their child will be pure and all this shit. And he's like, I am the wrath of God. And you just like look at these dead eyes, and it's fascinating, you know. And he's got this way of walking on camera that he came up with. It was just like a character trait. This guy is like, he's so becomes the character. Talking about Val Kilmer in the documentary about Richard Stanley being a method actor, Kinski was definitely a method actor, you know, to the point where he endangered people's lives, though. You know,
of course.
and like you almost chopped that guy's head off with a sword. If the guy wasn't wearing a helmet, he would have been dead.
Yeah.
But you know, a Gary Wrath of God was like, I think it was a perfect storm, because at one point Herzog shows this river that they shot on, and he said at one point out of nowhere, in a mere matter of minutes, it can rise 40 feet. And like they shot on this river, which was so intense, and there was such a high level of danger, and I think that probably added to the mix of everything. So they survived that, right, miraculously, and they go and make Nosferatu, I think was the next movie they did together, which was a remake of, like you were saying earlier with German silent films, this is a remake of the German silent film.
Max Schreck.
And in a way, Kinski as this vampire, like I love odd looking vampires. One of my favorite vampires was from a Buck Rogers episode, a space vampire.
Okay.
If I think you can get it on YouTube, actually. I forget what the episode is called, but this space vampire is creepy as shit, and takes what was Buck Rogers, Aaron Gray's character? What was her name?
Yeah.
Takes her like as a vampire. It's intense.
Is it Wilma Deering?
Wilma, yeah.
Wilma. My favorite space vampire is Matilda May.
Well, of course she is, for good reason.
But yeah,
I can give you two good reasons why you like her so much.
Yeah, buddy. But like, I wish they actually got more into Nosferatu in this one. That's an amazing movie with him and everything. But maybe there's just not as much to say there as there was with everything else.
I think so. I think that was kind of the whole point, was that he didn't have as much to say because it was a calm shoot. And it was actually more of a mainstream film, too.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, the whole time that we're talking about this, Werner Herzog himself directed this documentary. He created this documentary. So this is his point of view, and he even says I think it's kind of supposed to be a counterpoint to Klaus Kinski's book that I think came out like in 92 or 91 or something like that, where Klaus Kinski doesn't paint Werner Herzog in the best light, but then Werner Herzog in this documentary discusses the fact that him and Klaus Kinski talked about in Klaus Kinski's book, like it was a conscious decision from both of them to make Werner Herzog a certain way in the book in order to just like Klaus Kinski like to sell books and everything. And also keep in mind too, when this is being filmed, Klaus Kinski's already passed, so he is not alive to sort of, talk about what Werner Herzog is talking about here.
Yeah, that's interesting because what Corey was saying is totally correct, that Kinski wrote this book. I'm actually considering buying the English translated version just because I'm fascinated by it. They sat around and invented crazy stories because it wasn't going to make money. In Kinski's view, it wasn't going to make money if it was all factual because it's boring. I don't know about that. Who knows? Because Herzog, clearly his perspective, he's portrayed in a very calm way throughout this entire thing. And you're like, there's no fucking way that this guy made the movies that he made, did the shit that he did, and was able to like be as calm as he was on these sets, because all hell was breaking loose. Not necessarily on Nosferatu or Wojciech, But Fitzcarraldo definitely. Wojciech is interesting though because he kind of goes in timeline order like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And he interviews the female co-star to Wojciech. Her name's Eva Matez, I think, and kind of talks about she had a very interesting relationship with Kinski. Overall, she enjoyed working with him. But there's scenes in this. They show one specific scene where her character has had an affair slept with another man, and it's this one take. They filmed it in one shot, one take, and it's a masterpiece on acting. Yeah. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, if you need to see just like what Klaus Kinski was all about, or why he was who he was, this scene and the movie here, the Wojciech that we're talking about, it's amazing. He's amazing. Yes, maybe he's a monster. Maybe he's a fiend behind the scenes. But Werner Herzog talks about all the ways he has to learn how to get the performance that he wants out of Klaus Kinski, and it almost becomes this dance that they do where Klaus Kinski has so much energy in him that Werner Herzog has to learn ways to burn that energy off at first so he can get a better performance out of him. And then at the same time, Klaus Kinski sort of needs Werner Herzog to push his buttons in order to burn that energy, in order to get a better performance, after the energy is burned. It's fascinating, but this one scene that they show in its entirety, it's a one-take scene, one camera, one take. Fuck, dude. I had no investment in the movie, but I was invested in that scene when I was watching it, to the point where I forgot that I was watching a documentary. I was just watching that scene.
Yeah, his movies do that. They just, bring you in so intimately, and you're just engrossed into the whole thing. That the female actress Eva Matez, she talks about how she won an award for her performance and how he was so happy for her for this award, and she kind of talked about a softer side to Kinski, and that when the filming was done, she was like in tears because she was so sad. She had such a emotional connection to this film. And then he walks with her like to the hotel or something like that, and they're holding hands, and he's holding her while she's crying. And she was talking about how she just felt so comforted by him, and it's an interesting counterpoint, because we'll talk about some things in a little while that are not so great about him, outside of the practically killing people. But they also interview Claudia Cardinal, who is a beautiful Italian actress who was in the movie, my favorite Western of all time, Once Upon a Time in the West by Sergio Leone, with Peter Fonda, Jason Robards, who is supposed to be in Fitzcarraldo, and Charles Bronson. Fucking awesome Western. It's if you've never seen it, Ennio Morricone did the music for it. It's just spectacular. She's the female lead in it, and like you can't take your eyes off her because she's just like so interesting to look at. And she gets interviewed for this, and she talks about like the warmer sides to Kinski, right? And I'm sure Herzog did that to give a little bit of a counterpoint.
Yeah, I think so, because he also experienced all of it. He experienced the warmth as well as the pain of knowing, Klaus Kinski and knowing him so intimately and everything. And I mean, just their relationship alone is interesting. I don't think there's that many pairings. Like, art is kind of the only place you sort of find relationships like this and everything. And I think at a certain level, Werner Herzog like understood him, and I think Klaus Kinski understood Werner Herzog, and they sort of knew what to do and what buttons to push. That doesn't mean that everything was hunky dory, obviously, but I don't you can tell even Werner Herzog doesn't know how to approach the memory of Klaus Kinski in this documentary, because I think he himself is conflicted, because yes, he talks about, I mean, I'd say almost like 70% of the documentary is how horrible Klaus Kinski is. But he ends it, and we're not ending the review right now, but he ends it on a very positive note with Klaus Kinski, with this like butterfly and everything, and it was just, you have to basically.
That's fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Fascinating.
You have to see it. It's very interesting. I think it was was it Cobra Verde that it was filmed on, or was it?
That might have been Fitzcarraldo.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. And so this butterfly just was in love with Klaus Kinski, and he was like touching his feet. He was very delicate and gentle with it. And I think it says a lot that Werner Herzog ended it with that scene and that shot and everything. And I think that's important, because I don't think there was a lot of like, I do think that it's true. Like, I think their relationship was probably 70% volatile, but I think that 30%, and I think a lot of people who know people like this, that 30%, when the person is on your side, it's everything. It feels amazing to finally have this volatile person, like, be friends with you. And it's an interesting idea. And I have a friend that's sort of this way, and it's like, you sort of have to just take it with a grain of salt, and you have to choose how much energy you want to give them, and we don't have a relationship like this. But I think Werner Herzog, he chose to give Klaus Kinski his energy and everything, and even he doesn't know why. That's what makes this documentary so interesting. I mean, he knows why, like, that Klaus Kinski is an amazing actor, but he doesn't know why that, like, he allowed him to do so much abuse to him, essentially.
Well, yeah, like that butterfly scene you're talking about is fascinating on many levels, because I've never seen a butterfly do what that butterfly does in that scene. It's very weird. Mm-hmm. Like I'm going, what is going on?
That butterfly is literally in love with Klaus Kinski, and it's interesting.
It is really wild. But then you flip that coin on the set of Fitzcarraldo.
Yeah, the same set.
Which originally was supposed to, Jason Robards was supposed to be in that with Mick Jagger. It was a 20th Century Fox film, I believe. And it was supposed to have this huge budget, and it was supposed to go I mean, if you think about it now, what they did on set, what they did for this movie with Jason Robards and Mick Jagger would have been wild.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out that way, and Kinski ended up, filling. Jason Robards got sick.
Yeah.
Mick Jagger, I think, pulled out, so that's why Herzog filled the void for his friend. But there's moments on set he's arguing with the producer, I think, screaming at him about the food and it's such a little bitch moment where you're like, what are you're clearly doing this, you're mugging for the camera. Herzog's not doing anything. He's just letting it go. Just letting the scene
because
go
even he says, he's like, he was kind of happy that the anger wasn't directed at him. So he was like, I'm just gonna sit this one out.
Right? They're on set.
On location in Peru or wherever.
Yeah, there's local natives there who were in the film who were terrified because this is not how they ever interact. And Kinski doesn't give a fuck about those guys.
Because apparently in their native culture, they don't raise their voices, and they don't they don't express anger in that way. But he did say that they were afraid, but they weren't afraid of Klaus Kinski. They were afraid of Werner Herzog because he was so calm during this explosion, to the point where they were like, I think they looked up to him, and they even asked him, do you want us to kill Klaus Kinski? Because we will. And I think Werner Herzog kind of considered it.
Because Klaus Kinski almost killed somebody on that set with a rifle.
Yeah.
shot bullets into a room, and it almost killed somebody.
It shot off somebody's middle finger.
Yes.
You need your middle finger.
I mean, the guy was the highest degree of a risk on set, but yet he's in over 236 movies. So clearly people wanted him.
Because when they show scenes of Aguirre, Wrath of God, and I've never seen it, I immediately was like, where is this? I think it's on Tubi for free, so I'm going to watch it.
Oh, really?
It looks so fascinating. And Klaus Kinski looked fascinating. And I get it. He's got a face. He's got that look. There's something so interesting about him. The camera loves him. It's, everything you say. But it's there. It's true. Like, it's all there for him.
It's all there, and it's wild because first of all, like Tubi has commercials, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, because you really got to like, if you can find it without commercials, you got to watch it without commercials because it really would. I think it interrupts the flow.
I think it's on Amazon, but I don't know if it's Prime. I'll have to check. I would prefer, yes, to watch it without commercials.
Yeah, because it's one of those movies that the music is everything about it, atmospheric, everything. The sound of a bird, like the bird's chirp, it's so creepy. But yeah, he delivered, right, for the movies that he was in. Fitzcarraldo, it's so weird because on that one moment they show him going off and the villagers wanting to kill him, the locals, and then the next moment, like you said earlier, the cameramen, they're using this old ass riverboat down this like Amazonian river that is like, it almost split the boat in half at one point. It capsized at another point. Someone almost died. Yeah. And because people did die on set. And it's so fucking wild. And then, the cameraman almost loses a finger, and you see Kinski and Herzog jump in to help. And Kinski's so like sensitive and wanting to do the first aid himself.
Yeah. Like, and you can tell that he's doing it delicately. He's doing it with care, Yeah, and like so caring for him. It's also too, I'm fascinated because Kinski apparently was a huge germaphobe. Like apparently.
But yet he's working, like, look at the locations he's working in. Yeah. Like he didn't want to get dirty at all, right? Really? Because but then he's working in these locations that are clearly not going to support that. And then he doesn't have like he can't stand like animals, at one point in you see him in Aguirre, Wrath of God, like pick up a monkey and throw it. Yeah, I'm sure the monkey was fine, I hope.
I'm sure, but that monkey, when he picked that monkey up, that monkey looked terrified. That monkey looks at the camera and he reaches out his arm. Help me. That was not PETA approved, I'm sure.
No, and then in Wojciech, he's making out with his co-star in the scene of the movie. By the way, he totally grabbed her in the cooch.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah.
I was like, Jesus.
Guaranteed that wasn't rehearsed.
That was not rehearsed. But yeah, he's making out with his co-star in the scene, and there's like a cat on them or whatever. He picks up the cat and he throws. It's like a Bengal cat, which I love. Bengal cats are beautiful. They have opposable thumbs. They can literally open up cabinets with their paws. It's fascinating. My brother had one. Throws the cat on throws it. And you're just like, dude, fuck you, man. Don't you dare hurt an animal ever. But yeah, he was wild. Like that alone. Fitzcarraldo, you think after Fitzcarraldo almost ended their relationship, and they took a break for quite some time, because after they made Fitzcarraldo was made in like 82, and they made Cobra Verde in 87, 5 years later. Yeah. So they took a break from each other.
Yeah.
That movie almost.
Wojciech was 1979.
Yeah, like they did Aguirre, Nosferatu, and I think it's Wojciech. I think it's
Wojciech, okay.
yeah, but they did those movies back to back to back pretty much. But Burden of Dreams obviously explores Fitzcarraldo more specifically. This has elements of Burden of Dreams in it, so you're seeing the juicy moments where they literally are trying to hoist this boat over the mountain.
Yeah.
And Herzog, you can't tell if Kinski's in character or it's just him as an actor, and he's freaking out like, look, you're doing it. Yes, it's happening. Oh my God. It's just such wild shit. And so they take a break from each other, and then they don't see each other for many years. They see each other again at Telluride, I think.
Yeah. Yep.
A film festival.
A film festival. Yep.
And when they embrace each other, so Kinski's in the middle of talking to some producer or whatever, and then Herzog walks up from behind him and grabs him like you would grab your spouse.
Yeah.
And makes out with him practically.
I mean, the love is definitely there, and it's like you can feel it. It's palpable. It's these two men have literally been through war together, and 70% of it was between the two of them, but there's this love there. It's the title of this documentary is perfect. My Best Fiend. Again, I said it before, but you can tell when Werner Herzog is making this movie, you can tell he doesn't know where to land. Is this movie about how much he hates Klaus Kinski or how much he loves Klaus Kinski? It's neither. It's both. It's together. It's everything. It has no clear cut other than, I'll say, him ending it with that butterfly thing, I think is telling. I think there might be more love than hate, especially in a 8 years after his death, sort of looking back and everything.
Because what happens after Telluride, they kind of go into Cobra Verde, and go into more detail about that set and the issues that Kinski had with the locals in that movie. By the way, there's a scene in that movie that they show, and there's a big ass cobra snake on the ground, a real cobra,
where he
kicks it with his foot, his bare foot.
This dude does not like animals, yet that butterfly fell in love with him.
And this is supposed to be a guy who doesn't like, he's a germaphobe or whatever. And I mean, it's fucking wild to me. I'm like, damn, this guy is off. He's unhinged.
It reminds me of, guys and gals, go watch the first, I think it's the first. If it's not the first, it's the first 2 or 3 episodes of Little House on the Prairie. I think it's the first. But where the youngest one, Laura Ingalls or whatever, is running through the prairie, and their family friend, the guy with the beard, he's like, Laura, stop! And he fucking shoots a rattlesnake because she's about to sort of run into it. But it's the 70s, so it's a real fucking rattlesnake getting its head exploded on television. It's
Jesus
insane.
Christ. I never saw that. I don't think I ever watched Little House on the Prairie.
So when I worked at the video store, the owner / manager, Lenny, he was this super tough guy, super nice, loved the guy like an older brother, would never want to get in a fight with him because he would fucking kill me. But his favorite fucking show was Little House on the Prairie, and he went, he got the DVD box sets, and we would watch some here and there. I fucking hated that show, but I remember late 90s, early 2000s, watching the first episode with him and watching a real rattlesnake's head get exploded.
I mean, that's wild.
That's wild. Hey everybody, Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
We wrestled the demon Pazuzu in The Exorcist.
Your mother is in here, Karis. Would you like to leave a message? I'll see that she gets it.
We hooked the fisherman killer Ben Willis, and I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Oh, you got a letter? I got run over. Helen gets her hair chopped off. Julie gets a body in her trunk, and you get a letter. That's balanced.
We survived a summer away with the angel of death, Angela Baker, in Sleepaway Camp.
Look what I did. I packed you and your cousin some goodies for the ride up to camp. Wasn't that nice of me?
But we ain't seen nothing yet. Join Alex and Dean of the Return, Revenge, Resurrection podcast as we go toe-to-toe with the ever-resourceful Michael Myers.
I shot him 6 times.
Be there as we discuss the Halloween franchise in its entirety, from John Carpenter's beloved 1978 classic to David Gordon Green's epic forthcoming finale.
I shot him in the heart.
We cover it all, the good, the bad, and the bloody. Return, Revenge, Resurrection, a podcast that slashes its way through horror movie franchises.
You don't know what death is.
New episodes every Thursday, available wherever podcasts are found.
I told everyone.
And now, back to the show.
I mean, it's wild. Like, but then again, I think I've said wild probably more times in this brief episode than I think I've said in any of our previous breakdowns. This documentary is wild.
Dude,
it's just
you're not
the whole
wrong.
thing. It's like little things too that, you know, I said that the couple that he meets in the beginning looks super uncomfortable when they're on camera. These are like kind of side notes to me that I thought were amusing. Herzog will have the camera pointed on him, and he'll just be looking at the camera while he's narrating himself, but he's not talking. It's you know, the narration's playing, and he's just looking at the camera, and it's very uncomfortable. There's a hilarious moment. He interviews a photographer, this guy named Beat Presser.
Yeah, when they're like, they laugh about something. So they're talking about something with Klaus Kinski and they laugh, but then the camera looks at the photographer, and then the photographer just stops laughing and just looks at the camera like, what am I supposed to be doing? That was
it's
so
really
weird.
It's so weird. It's so uncomfortable. Almost like he didn't realize the camera was on, and suddenly he did.
Yeah. But I can totally see Werner Herzog being like, we're going to keep that because it's so real.
Yes, totally. It's exactly what Herzog does. You know, Herzog, again, like the guy made a documentary called Caves of Dreams or something like that, where like he goes into these beautiful caves. It's so meditative. His films are very meditative. But to know the but the flip side of knowing what went on behind the scenes, I know we talked about it in the beginning, but going back to Aguirre Wrath of God, that's a movie that, you know, you could have with the sound off because it's got subtitles. You read the subtitles and you can put on some trippy music to watch, just, you know, while you're watching the movie.
Real quick.
Yeah.
It's Cave of Forgotten Dreams, 2010.
Yeah, everybody should go check that out. That is a beautiful documentary. Grizzly Man, if you've never seen it, it's like,
is that the guy that lived with grizzly bears, but then got killed by one eventually?
Yes. Yeah. Because the guy was like he's trying to make a name for himself.
Yeah.
And you know, side note, I was just at the Natural History Museum like about a week ago with my son, and I'm reading about brown bears and grizzly bears and how they're like the most gentle creatures. Just don't fuck with them. So,
just don't fuck with them.
You know, this guy like got in a little too deep, but that's a fascinating documentary with an amazing soundtrack too, by the way.
Wait,
yeah,
he directed Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans?
He sure did.
That's wild.
With Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, that's fucking wild.
I did it for the money.
Yeah. And yeah, real quick, Grizzly Man 2005.
Yeah, and I think you know, Herzog, I think a lot of people know Herzog right now from his acting, right? He did a really good job on The Mandalorian.
Dude, I don't like why? Like, even like when he was on Mandalorian, I was like, why are you here? I mean, I love him. I think he was great, but like, why did he show up on The Mandalorian?
Well, I've heard stories about so for those that don't know, you know, when I was a teacher, I had a lot of like high profile parents of my students, and one of them being Hans Zimmer. Hans Zimmer was a parent of mine in my class, and he and I became friendly with the whole family. But he told a story about how he went to visit Werner Herzog in his home, and how Werner Herzog was not the guy that's portrayed on camera, like in a better way. He's like super jovial and much more kind of silly. There's a silly side to Herzog. He's friends with Herzog, and I'm like, can you set that up for me so I can meet the man? Because
and I think that goes back to the very beginning of the movie where he's talking to those two people that that own now his house that he grew up in as a child. I think that was a very important thing to put into the movie because you really see how warm, how nice, how cordial he is to people. He when he was talking to them, he has no ego, and you know that they have to know he's Werner Herzog. Like he's a huge name, but he just seems so easy to get along with at that moment. And I think that's a part of his personality that probably is not cultivated by the media, but I think that might be, his personality,
Yeah, and trust me, I'm not saying the guy's not quirky. There's a moment in this when he pulls out this little diary that he was writing notes in, and the font is microscopic.
Yeah,
what he's writing, and I feel like it's Claudia Cardinale. It's one of his female stars that he had in his movies. She's like, you should make that into a book. He's like, no, that's this is for my own eyes. But Kinski was maniacally obsessed with wanting to know what he was writing in that book at all times. At all times.
In that microscopic book. Yeah.
Microscopic.
It's tiny. So, it's fucking tiny.
It is tiny. And so the movie, like Corey said, it ends with this beautiful butterfly shot, but prior to that is like the final scene of Cobra Verde, where his character basically gets consumed by the ocean and dies. And that was like the last time they saw each other after that. And they wrap up that story. Kinski died in 91. He lived outside of San Francisco. I think it may be in Sonoma. I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, I think north of San Francisco.
Yeah, north of San Francisco. But, his relationship with Herzog's relationship with Kinski is wild. You guys should definitely watch it. Before we kind of button this up, Kinski, let's button up Kinski specifically, because Kinski, an article came out not that long ago about a side of Kinski that doesn't really surprise.
Yeah, so his eldest daughter, and you were right, by the way, Tasha Kinski in Cat People is his daughter. I don't know if it's her that wrote this. I don't think it's her. But there was, his eldest daughter wrote a autobiography about herself, and apparently Klaus Kinski sexually abused her from a very young age for a while, like till she, I think she was like 18 or 19 or 15, whatever. And yeah, it's horrible to say, but when that came out, it's like, I can probably see that happening. You know what I mean? Just because he's such a chaotic individual and everything. And of course she put it out after his death, so he can't, he can't comment on it, so we have to take that. But I'm inclined to believe her, in this. But this goes to the bigger discussion that we always have of, where do we draw the line on artists and where do we separate the artist from the art and yada yada yada. And I don't know what the right answer is, but Zach and I knew going into this discussion that we were going to have to bring this up no matter what.
Yeah. I mean, it's controversial, but the guy was a controversial guy prior to that. And some might say just like, you think of actors who throw fits on set for various reasons and act like maniacs, but yet you still love the movies that they do, right? And the performances. Another side note quickly, that he lived in Lagunitas, California. I only know that for the beer. I'm like, I didn't even realize that was a place.
I didn't either, bro.
So there you go. And he died at the age of 65. But if you are inclined and you can remove yourself from whatever personal shit was going on with him, and you're interested in some of his movies, I highly recommend The Great Silence. And like I said, it may come up eventually. And definitely in my book, I would recommend seeing Aguirre, Wrath of God, and Fitzcarraldo. If you're gonna watch one Herzog, do Aguirre. If you're gonna watch two, go for Fitzcarraldo.
How is Cobra Verde?
It's good. I own all of them. Anchor Bay put out a beautiful box set, like the Herzog Kinski collection. That's where I got this documentary. The documentary is hard to come by, actually. I know you can rent it on YouTube. It might be available on Amazon Prime. I'm not sure. I had to find Corey a used DVD version because there's no Blu-ray out of it. You don't need a Blu-ray for a documentary.
No.
It looks cooler. It's smaller box.
Yeah, no. This doesn't need a Blu-ray or anything, but I do appreciate you getting me a physical copy of this, dude. This documentary was like a master craftsman documentary, and obviously it's Werner Herzog, so we know that going in. But it's so very different than the Lost Soul documentary that we discussed 2 weeks back. That one, obviously, we said is very focused on one particular film. And it's not done by the actual, creator or anything. This here is made by Werner Herzog. This is his documentary. This is on his IMDb and everything like that. But it's so different, but it's very fascinating. Both of them, it's apples and oranges. You know what I mean? Like they're so very different documentaries, but I will probably rewatch this multiple times for different reasons than I'm going to rewatch Lost Soul for multiple times. This is just such an insight into, it's not the creative process and it's not the creative energy, but it's an insight into, I guess, maybe the byproduct of a high creative energy, maybe coupled with a mental a thing. I don't know. I'm not trying to be like disparaging or anything like that, but coupled with possibly like mental health issues or something. I'm sure somebody's diagnosed him posthumously and everything.
I mean, let's be honest. What we know now psychologically was so different way back then.
Yeah.
Way back then it was just looked differently upon. And so I just feel like in some ways I'm like, well, there has to be, otherwise the guy is just an asshole.
You're just an asshole at this point. Yeah. No, he has so much energy in him and so much creativity in him, Klaus Kinski did, that it has to be something else than him just being an asshole.
Well, like I said in the beginning of this episode, he, as a young child, teenager, filling his room up with leaves and nothing else, and like wanting to live that way, it's just so bizarre. It's so weird.
But this is also not just a look into Klaus Kinski.
Yeah.
It's a look into Werner Herzog.
Totally.
And it's a look into their friendship. And ultimately, that's the hook of this documentary. And that's also, where it really shines is when Werner Herzog is talking about his friend, not about his coworker or whatever. I think it's a complicated energy. It's a complicated relationship, and the documentary tries to. I feel for Werner Herzog. You can tell he's trying to just sort shit out in this documentary, and of course he's doing it after his friend / enemy / creative partner has passed. So he has to look at everything retrospectively, because there are no new memories at this point coming forward. So it's I think the thing I can probably say the most is that there's a lot of heart in this and a lot of love. Even though he portrays a lot of hate, I think he's trying to give you a complete picture. But I think at the end of the day, he being Werner Herzog, but I think at the end of the day, he's trying to give you a complete picture out of love as opposed to giving you a complete picture out of hate. Like, I think ultimately where he lands is that he loves Klaus Kinski and that he loves the history they have together. If not the moments that they spent together were a bit volatile. But I think at the end of the day, this documentary is about love. And I think the title is perfect. My Best Fiend.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad you're considering watching it more than once. This is probably my 4th time I watched it. And I always get something new out of it every time. And that guy, the photographer's face gets me every time.
Yeah. That was so weird. He looks at the camera and goes from like laughing smile to just a flat dead face on camera. It happens in front of your eyes for no reason because they go on and keep talking, but that moment is really weird.
So uncomfortable and awesome at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean this movie is not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but if you're a cinephile and you appreciate true artists and not just Hollywood, mainstream, then you'll really enjoy this. From a dramatic perspective, I think you'll be blown away because this is Kinski's behavior, I think, possibly was staged at times on his behalf. Like, he's in front of the camera, he's going to do his thing. However, what transpired on film was not staged. The accidents that happen on set were not staged. All this stuff is legit. So it's really fascinating.
And can I just say that, like, my notes at the beginning of the documentary, my note on Klaus Kinski was, oh, this dude needs to get checked. He just needs to get fucking popped in the nose. But by the end of this documentary, I didn't want that to happen. Like, I think Werner Herzog, again, master craftsman. He played my emotions. My emotions were exactly what he wanted from this documentary. He wanted me to start out by hating Klaus Kinski because he starts with that volatile tour, that Jesus tour that he did. He starts with that, but he ends with the butterfly. And I think that the journey we all go on is the journey that he went on, which is, I hate this motherfucker. But by the end of it, you're like, fuck, like, he's still a piece of shit, but there's something about him that's genuine. And the thing with his daughter aside, we don't obviously condone that and everything. And obviously, again, we said he's not here to defend himself or rebuttal anything, but I still take her, I take her as truth, I'll take that as truth. But it doesn't take away the fact that the performances that he puts on screen that I've only seen through this documentary are powerful. And I can see why Klaus Kinski was who he was. Yeah.
And the opening is actually kind of comical in ways because he's like having a meltdown on stage and people are trying to like get him off stage and he's like whipping the microphone away from them and like pushing a dude back.
And there was like that dude that he pushes back was like a foot taller than him. And I was like, dude, pop him. Just fucking pop him.
Well, I think that guy tried to, and then there's a security guard in the back, like holding him back. So it's really funny. You're like, what the hell's going on? And then you cut to the rest of the movie. It's a beautiful balance of a lot of emotions and definitely worth the ride that you will go on watching it. And again, I brought this to the table because, as much as I love everything from Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man to, Death Spa, I also love artistic as fuck films like, Aguirre Wrath of God, like that spans the gamut for both of us, Yeah. And so this is like a little bit of, this is a nice departure, but still very much in the cult genre, because Klaus Kinski, personal life aside, is a cult icon in cinema, and Herzog definitely has a cult following too.
Yeah. No, I'm super glad I watched this, dude. I found it to be fascinating, and I absolutely loved it. So thank you for bringing it to the show. These 2 documentary episodes, this month of our documentaries, I very much enjoyed, dude. It was a nice little break, nice little departure of what we normally do. It gives us a little bit of a recharge and everything.
It also makes me think a little bit about our Patreon show that we do. For those of you that are curious and don't already know, we have a Patreon exclusive show, a tour de force show with the Carpenter Factor, where we're not breaking down, but we're having a freeform discussion about every single one of John Carpenter's movies right now. Very similar discussion in a sense where, we have this freeform open kind of discussion about the movies of John Carpenter. So we're doing that right now on our Patreon. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, please consider joining and becoming one. Not only that, but maybe you're like, we're listing off these movies that Herzog's done, Kinski's done, and you're like, you guys should really break down blah, blah, blah. Well, if you want to suggest a movie to us, sign up at our highest tier on our Patreon, like Robert Ortiz has, and Aaron Don Gilmer, and Crystal has as well. And you can suggest a movie that we will break down on the show. There's a lot more on there. I don't want to, drive it home too much, but definitely check out our Patreon exclusive content and go to our Patreon page for that stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And these 2 episodes are kind of almost sort of like what we do with the Carpenter Factor, except we actually like sort of compare the movie with other movies that he's done and everything. But I wouldn't be surprised that if we see Richard Stanley pop up on the Tour de Force series at some point, considering he only has a handful of movies. We can get through that in half a year, no problem. But this I definitely would like to tackle, if not on the show, in my personal life. I would like to actually dive into Aguirre Wrath of God. I want to watch that, but I want to watch it more in a proper setting without commercials. I want to watch Cobra Verde, and was it Fitzgerald? What's it called?
Fitzgeraldo.
Fitzgerald. There you go.
Fitzgeraldo,
But yeah, dude, if anything, this documentary, My Best Fiend, made me want to go watch those movies that they talked about here. So
right on.
I appreciate you bringing this to the show, and I appreciate everyone who supports the show and everything. And if you like what we do, obviously, as Zach said, go check out our Patreon page. But a free way to help out the show is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If it's Apple Podcasts, it'd be great if you left us an actual blurb or whatever, but just rating us 5 stars, does a huge help. Same for Spotify, and please do the same thing for $2 late fee and everything else on the BFOP network that we have here. It goes a long way to help out the show and everything, and a free way to help out all the shows. But Zach, what you got? We're wrapping up August now, so what do you have coming in September for $2 late fee?
Oh, very excited. Very excited. We have Craig Saffin, who is the movie composer for The Last Starfighter.
Oh, nice.
Yep. He
Directed
also
by Nick Castle.
Right. And also composed the score for Remo Williams. Craig Saffin also composed the score for The Legend of Billie Jean.
Oh, love that movie.
And he also composed a very important track for the movie Thief, directed by Michael Mann, starring the late James Caan, rest in peace.
Jesus Christ. We gotta get used to saying the late James Caan. My God.
I know.
And,
And
side
Dustin,
note, Michael Mann might be another auteur that we tackle on a tour de force.
Oh yeah, wait till you hear Craig Saffin's take on Michael Mann. But I will. But this coincides with our another episode in September. We're covering Thief by Michael Mann, and Craig Saffin's song, which is featured at the end of the movie. It's badass. It's not Tangerine Dream did the soundtrack to Thief, but Craig Saffin composed this final track, which is it's so good.
Yeah.
Wait till you hear it. But yeah, Craig Saffin was a great guest on our show. So September is going to be Craig Saffin and Thief.
Nice, perfect.
How about you over at Cartwright? You're wrapping things up on Cartwright.
We are. Probably by this point, we're recording so early. Probably by this point, we are close to, if not already, wrapped up Cartwright. Or Seinfeld, I should say. Adam and I are still going through Curb Your Enthusiasm and everything. But we did 9 seasons of the show about nothing. And not going to lie, it's still my favorite sitcom of all time. I know.
Awesome.
I know Zach loves it. It's funny. You and I talk offline. We do, we'll send Seinfeld gifs to each other or whatever. But we don't talk about Seinfeld too much on here. But you love your Seinfeld.
I sure do. It's so funny because over at $2, and I'll bring up something, and Dustin's like, "You've never talked about this ever in our relationship," and I'm like, yeah, because I'm too busy talking about the stuff that's content for the show. So that's probably why.
Yeah, guys and gals, when one of your close friends also becomes like your co-host, your relationship then becomes more about like the show that you're producing and everything.
Exactly.
But Seinfeld, we both love it. It's a great show.
It's so good.
Go check out Cartwright, a Seinfeld podcast. Go check out, of course, $2 late fee. We love Dustin, as you all heard in the the fucking Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, and we're gonna do it every year. We're gonna do a crossover event every year.
It's his pick next year.
It's his pick next year. I can't wait to see what he picks. But I love it, man. I love the crossover event that we do. It's fantastic. But check out all the friends of the network. Check out Ready to Retro. Check out Kenobe by our pal Diallo from TV Obscura. Check out Manic Movie Monday. Check out Give Me Back My Action Movies. Give Me Back My Horror Movies. Check out our pal Donna of the Dead. By the way, I believe she also worked at a video store too, so maybe you guys can talk to her one day about that. A lot of us worked at video stores back in the day.
Well, Erin Dawn Gilmer was just on our an episode of Tales from the Video Store, which is on our Patreon, and she ooh, baby, she tells a crazy story. You got to listen to it, guys. David Irons is going to be on, too. So you got to come check out Tales from the Video Store on our Patreon.
That's awesome. And, of course, check out everything David Irons got going on. Check out fucking 7 Winters Alone. Don't Go to Wheelchair Camp. All the other fucking million fucking books he's got going on. He's very prolific.
I believe David's writing another book, Scarlet Fever, a.k.a. Scarlet, I Love You, or Baroness, I Love You More.
There you go. And as always,
we will catch you on the most horrible dark side of nature. Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
Imagine being one of the last people on Earth, being trapped alone with something not human, something always watching, something always waiting. What would you do? Where would you run? Where would you hide if you were haunted for 7 winters alone?
Podcasting After Dark presents 7 Winters Alone, a dystopian haunted house story by David Irons.
Available now in paperback and ebook.